Okay, there we go. So we can move to the next
Yes.
slide. So we go. I just wanted to give you an overview of what I will talk about. I just wanted to, yes, first have an overview of why the reform is there. And then we have a closer look, a quick one on processes and temporary storage, which I know is one of your concerns, and very briefly to go through the timeline, so to then give the opportunity to the other speakers to have their feedback. If we move to the next slide, actually, to further, please. So the why, I just wanted to recall that this has taken a long way. So there seems to be a certain perception that the Commission woke up one day with a very ambitious proposal. No, it's not the case. There's been a few numbers of years. We have the political instructions from our president, and from that moment, a series of actions started taking place. There was a foresight study, which I know it sounds as a very Brussels-like kind of, but the truth is that the foresight study predicted we are in the worst case scenario of the foresight with a war in Europe. So there are some of the elements that seemed a bit not realistic at the time that now have to be considered even for customs, which at the end of the day it's a border control service. If we then move to the Customs Action Plan there and the UCC, no, you can go, we're just going step by step of the previous slide, please. So if in 2020 we have the Customs Action Plan, where the idea already of having a customs agency was clearly depicted. We also have the UCC evaluation that revealed that the UCC is not delivering as it should. Then we have the wise persons group, where not only customs people, but not customs people were able to assess how customs was performing and to bring in ideas from other areas. Then we had our impact assessment, and finally the reform. So it is a reflection that has been going on for a while, and that has taken into account different elements. I'm going to move to the next slide very quickly. I don't want to tire you with the impact assessment, but I think it's very important to know what is that the customs reforms intends to do. There are two external forces. These are the two arrows that you see on the top and the down, which is e-commerce, that it's a completely different business model and that creates challenges for customs. And there is the exponential increase in prohibitions and restrictions. We have counted, and it's up to 364 pieces of legislation that importers or exporters need to take into account. This creates a challenge for everyone, but also for customs. And this is more difficult to change from a customs perspective. However, there are three elements that we thought that from a customs perspective could be changed. One of them is the complexity of the customs processes. The second one is the fragmented digitalization, that it's becoming increasingly complex. And then the fragmented governance structure that creates a non-harmonization in the implementation of the rules. The consequence of that, like revenue is lost, there is an incomplete supply chain control, and non-compliant and illegal products enter the single market. And this plays against the legitimate business, all this, because the non-legitimate go through without paying duties, go through without complying with the relevant pieces of legislation. If we move to the next one, this is a slide that you probably have seen, but that for us it's important because it shows that the reinforcing objective is that by creating simpler rules and simpler tools, we will have a stronger customs union, where legitimate business can go through without control, and customs, which also has scarce resources, customs authorities can concentrate on the most risky business. One of the goals was to reduce compliance cost. Another one was the tailor-made regime for e-commerce, because the current customs rules do not fit well with e-commerce. For a better protection of the single market, there is the need of an EU level of risk management, because as you perfectly know, today the risk management is national, which means that for certain operators, it's relatively easy to move from one member state to another and avoid controls. And then the creation of a true customs union, again, with a more uniform implementation of the legislation. So for this, what's the triangle, it's the key for us, and it's the key for the customs reform. And the two elements that you see at the sides are the enablers. One of them is the EU Customs Data Hub, which is the digitalization of all these processes. Another one is the EU Customs Authorities, that means the agency. So the goal of the reform is not to create the data hub and the agency. It's to change the way customs work. And for that, what we call the two key enablers are necessary. If we move to the next slide, it's important to look at the big picture because there is a policy value in terms of numbers. Of course, customs collects duties. The duties are meant to offset a competitive advantage that the third country goods have. So it is important that the duties are collected on top of it. Of course, the duties are part of the member states and the European Union budget. But also today, we counted in the impact assessment that there are up to 111 systems for customs today in the Union. The goal is to move to one single digitalization tool, the data hub. Our calculations is that would save to the member states between 1 and 2 billion per year, but also to traders not having to deal with different interfaces, but having also one entry point to their customs, all kinds of customs processes. Of course, there is also the 150 euro duty threshold, which benefits what we call e-commerce. It's the business to consumer transactions, and that provides them with a financial advantage that it's priced in between 1 and 2 billion per year. In 2023, 2.3 billion of consignments below 150 enter the European Union. Normal imports, like let's say high value imports, it's around 300 million per year. So the volume of transactions below 150 is extremely high. Of course, we have inspired ourselves on what has already happened in the area of VAT, where the reform has already collected 1.5 billion of VAT, and that is 2021. The number in 22 and 23 is even higher. And of course, a better supervision will help closing what we call the customs gap, so the duties that are not collected, and also the VAT fraud. So all in all, the reform is also trying to make customs more efficient and to ensure that the duties and the relevant taxes are collected not from all business and not only from the legitimate ones. If we move to the next one, this is, well, okay, this most of you, I'm sure, know this already, but sometimes as the package is difficult to understand, we have this communication and we have 3 separate legal acts that are interlinked, but that legally follow different adoption procedures in the Council and the Parliament. The Union Customs Code is adopted by the co-legislators. The Parliament has already adopted its position, and now we are waiting. We are discussing in the Council, and then once the 2 positions are adopted, there will be the trials. By contrast, there is a second regulation which is to be adopted exclusively by the Council by qualified majority. And this is a one that proposes the removal of the 150 customs duty exemption, and also introduces the so-called simplified tariff treatment. And finally, there is a VAT proposal, which is also linked to the customs reform, which is to be adopted in Council by unanimity, and that is the one that proposes that the import one-stop shop for VAT does not have the 150 euro limit either. There are, you see also what we call the 4 blocks of the of the customs reform, which is the customs processes and the simplifications, the e-commerce, the EU Customs Authority, and the EU Customs Data Hub. I will not enter into all of these because there are other speakers. So very quickly, I will go to the processes and then to the temporary storage so that I know it's an area of interest or not. Can you go to this next one, please? So the customs processes, what we have seen is that there are multiple steps and declarations that require, let's say, specific documents only for customs purposes and multiple actors. And the idea was to simplify that by creating a system, not only the data hub, that would rely as much as possible on business data and read business data without the need to create a specific customs declaration, and that would reduce the number of responsible person. That does not at all eliminate the possibility to have intermediaries. The intermediaries are there, but vis-a-vis customs, the number of actors is reduced. I have already referred to the traders interface. Instead of having different ones for different steps, having a single one that would allow the reuse of the data, and that would rely, this is important because I thought you had also a concern about the maritime single window. The idea is that the data hub would be connected to port and airport community systems, and it is even foreseen in the legal text that the connection to the maritime single window. So that the work that is already ongoing in other areas is connected to the one of customs. Then another relatively frequent complaint that we have is that the authorized economic operators did not have enough advantages. So we have created this new figure, the trust and check traders, which apparently is a name that no one likes, but that the idea is to have some operators that would enjoy a high number of benefits. If we move to the next one, that allows me to explain temporary storage in the way we have conceived it. I will not hide to you that this has created a strong reaction and a lot of criticism, although it's true that once we have explained it, we have also gathered some support, but the prevailing view, I will not hide it, is that this is not the way it should be, and it creates a lot of disruption for businesses. So it's something I'm admitting from the beginning. But just to explain what's the idea behind what we call the entry process, in Article 83, there is no notification of arrival of the means of transport, but it is also meant the notification of arrival of the goods, as what we call today the presentation notification. So as two separate notifications that sometimes will be down into only one moment. So this is the moment in which the temporary storage would start as a de facto situation. A de facto situation that the way it is proposed, it would last 3 or 6 days, depending, and does not require to provide any additional data or any guarantee. Because if the goods are meant to be stored, the correct procedure would be the customs warehousing, where the goods can be stored without limit. So the temporary storage, the idea is that it's a very short term with no additional data requirements in addition to the ENF and no guarantee until it is decided whether or not the goods need to be stored for longer. And in that case, without any kind of temporary limitation. We have learned that that doesn't suit the business. We would be in favor of going back to temporary storage that it's longer, that it's 90 days as today in the UCC, but then of course the temporary storage would have to go back to having an authorization and having a warranty and having certain data requirements. So this was the solution in case the temporary storage remained as a very short time situation. In case we go back to the UCC situation, let's say, then there is a need to go back to the conditions under the UCC. I'm sure you will have questions on that, so then we'll talk more. And then my last slide is just on the timeline. I think you might be familiar with it already, but I just wanted to recall it, that 2028 and 2032 are the to dates where the implementation would start. So we know that it's a bit late down the road, but we were trying to have a realistic planning also for IT purposes. We are receiving a lot of pressure to shorten this time, so I will not hide it. That's all from my side. Maybe I've been a bit long, but hope it was useful. Back to Mateo. Thank you.